I saw the white powder dissolve in the cranberry spritzer. My daughter-in-law Tiffany smiled, waiting for my heart to stop so she could claim my estate. But when the toast began, I created a distraction. 10 minutes later, sirens were screaming. But not for me. I was standing over the stretcher, holding the evidence and planning my checkmate. Hello, ladies. Pull your chairs in close and maybe put a cover on your drink while you listen to this one. We like to think that Thanksgiving is about gratitude and turkey and pumpkin pie, but sometimes it's about survival. I spent 40 years as a federal judge. I have stared down cartel bosses, serial killers, and corrupt politicians. I learned a long time ago that the most dangerous people in the world do not always have tattoos on their faces. Sometimes they have manicures and wear cashmere sweaters and call you mom. This is the story of how my daughter-in-law tried to sentence me to death over a cranberry spritzer, and how I overruled her objection with extreme prejudice. It was 3 in the afternoon on the fourth Thursday of November. My dining room looked like a magazine spread because I paid for it to look that way. I had hired a caterer because at 70 years old, I refused to spend 3 days wrestling a 20-pound bird. The china was my grandmother's Limoges. The silver was polished to a mirror shine, and the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a steak knife. My son Jason was sitting at the foot of the table, loosening his tie. He looked sweaty. Jason always looked sweaty when he was hiding something. He had asked me for money 3 times in the last month. First it was for a business investment, then it was for a car repair, then it was just because things were tight. I said no every time. I loved my son, but I did not finance foolishness. His wife Tiffany was in the kitchen, helping with the drinks. Tiffany was 29 years old and had the kind of ambition that usually leads to a prison sentence. She owned a boutique downtown that sold overpriced polyester to tourists. I knew for a fact she was 3 months behind on the rent because the landlord was an old friend of mine from the country club. And then there was Linda, Tiffany's mother. She was sitting to my right, wearing a dress that was too tight, and drinking my expensive Chardonnay like it was water. Linda was a loud woman. She was the kind of woman who laughed at her own jokes and asked you how much your house was worth before she asked how you were feeling. I was sitting at the head of the table, watching the reflection in the sideboard mirror. It was an old trick I learned in the courtroom. You never look directly at the witness when you want to catch them in a lie. You look at them sideways. Tiffany walked in carrying a silver tray. There were 4 crystal goblets on it. 3 of them were filled with amber liquid. 1 was filled with a bright red cranberry spritzer. Here we go, Tiffany chirped. Her voice was high and tight. I made everyone a special cocktail. And for you, Martha, I made your favorite cranberry spritzer, since I know you're watching your sugar. She set the tray down on the sideboard. Her back was to the room, but she didn't know about the mirror. I watched her hand reach into the pocket of her cardigan. I watched her pull out a small paper packet. It looked like a sweetener packet, but it wasn't. It was unmarked. She tore the corner with her teeth. She tipped it over the red drink. The white powder fell into the bubbles and dissolved instantly. She gave it a quick swirl with a cocktail stirrer. My heart stopped for a beat. Then it started beating again, slow, heavy, deliberate. She was poisoning me. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a laxative. I saw the look on her face in the mirror. It was a look of pure, focused malice. She checked the room over her shoulder. She smoothed her hair. She picked up the tray. Okay, everyone, she announced, turning around with a bright plastic smile. Time for a toast. She walked toward the table. She placed a whiskey sour in front of Jason. She placed a vodka gimlet in front of her mother Linda. And she held the cranberry spritzer in her hand, walking toward me. "Here you go, Mom," she said. "Drink up, it's delicious." I looked at the glass. It was beautiful. It was etched crystal, and it was filled with death. "Thank you, Tiffany," I said. My voice was steady. I didn't shake. I didn't blink. "That is very thoughtful of you." I didn't touch it. I let it sit on the coaster. "We need a toast," Linda shouted. She was already reaching for her glass. "Come on, Martha. Make a speech. You're the judge." I looked at Tiffany. She was standing by Jason's chair watching me. Her eyes were fixed on that red glass. She was waiting. She was holding her breath. I needed a distraction. I needed 3 seconds of chaos. I stood up slowly. I gripped the edge of the table. "Of course," I said. "Let me just get the gravy boat. It seems to be empty." I reached for the heavy porcelain gravy boat in the center of the table. My hand slipped. I didn't just drop it. I launched it. I slapped it with the back of my hand like I was having a muscle spasm. The boat flew across the table. It hit Jason's water glass. It shattered. Brown gravy exploded everywhere. It covered the tablecloth. It splashed onto Linda's dress. It dripped onto the floor. "Oh my God!" Linda screamed, jumping up. "My dress!" Jason jumped up. "Mom, are you okay?" Tiffany rushed forward, grabbing napkins. "Oh no, the carpet." Everyone was looking at the gravy. Everyone was looking at the mess. I moved with the speed of a striking cobra. I reached out with my left hand and grabbed my poisoned red drink. I reached out with my right hand and grabbed Linda's vodka gimlet. I switched them. It took less than a second. I slid the red glass in front of Linda's empty placemat. I slid the vodka glass in front of mine. Then I slumped back into my chair, clutching my chest. "I am so sorry," I gasped. My hand just gave out. "I am getting so clumsy in my old age." "It's okay, Mom," Jason said, wiping gravy off his shirt. "It's just an accident. Don't worry." Tiffany was on her hands and knees scrubbing the carpet. She looked up at me. She looked annoyed, but she didn't look suspicious. She hadn't seen the switch. She thought I was just a clumsy old woman. She stood up. She took a deep breath. "It's fine," she said. "We can clean it up later. Let's just have our toast. We need to relax." She looked at me. She looked at the glass in front of me, the glass that was now filled with harmless vodka. "Go ahead, Mom," she said. "You need a drink to calm your nerves." I picked up the glass. "Yes," I said. "I believe I do." "Honey, let me tell you something about hospitals. They are the only places on earth where people stop pretending. You can lie in a church and you can lie in a courtroom. But when you are sitting under those fluorescent lights, waiting to hear if someone is dead or alive, the truth has a way of leaking out of your pores." I arrived at St. Jude's Medical Center 20 minutes after the ambulance. I walked in through the automatic doors, clutching my purse like a lifeline. Inside that purse, wrapped in a silk scarf, was the plastic bag containing the broken glass and the poison residue. It was the most important piece of evidence in my life, and I held it with the same care I used to hold the nuclear launch codes when I consulted for the Department of Defense back in the 80s. I found them in the ICU waiting room. It was a bleak space painted a color I would call despair beige. Tiffany was pacing back and forth, wearing a path into the linoleum. Her designer cardigan was stained with gravy, and she looked like a raccoon that had been caught in a garbage truck. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black rivers. Jason was sitting in a plastic chair with his head in his hands, bouncing his leg up and down so hard, it was shaking the row of seats connected to him. I paused at the entrance. I took a deep breath. I adjusted my posture. I let my shoulders slump. I made my hands tremble. It was time for the performance of a lifetime. I shuffled into the room, looking every bit the terrified 70-year-old widow they thought I was. Mom, Jason jumped up when he saw me. He looked relieved, but his eyes were darting around like a trapped animal. You made it. Are you okay? You look pale. I am fine, Jason, I rasped, making my voice sound thin and reedy. It was so sudden. How is Linda going to make it? We don't know, Tiffany snapped. She didn't look at me. She was chewing on her thumbnail. The doctors are running tests. They think it might be an allergic reaction or a stroke. They are asking questions about what she ate. My heart did a little flip. Questions. Good, what did you tell them? I asked innocently. I told them she had the turkey and the stuffing. Tiffany said quickly, and the drink, but it was just cranberry juice, Mom. Just juice and soda. It couldn't have been the drink. She was saying it to convince herself, not me. I sat down next to Jason. I let out a long, shaky sigh. I need some water, I whispered. My throat is so dry, Jason dear. Could you get me a cup from the cafeteria? The fountain water tastes like pennies. Of course, Mom, Jason said. He looked glad to have a task. He hurried off toward the elevators. I turned to Tiffany. She was staring at the double doors of the ICU. Tiffany, dear, I said softly. I am going to the ladies' room to splash some water on my face. I feel faint. She waved her hand at me without looking. Just go, Martha. Stop asking for permission. I walked out of the waiting room. I shuffled until I turned the corner. Then I straightened my back. I walked briskly past the nurse's station and down the hall to the emergency exit that led to the parking garage. I pushed the heavy door open and stepped into the cool night air. A dark sedan was idling in the corner of the lot. I walked over to it. The window rolled down. It was Frank. He was a private investigator I had used for 20 years. He was the man who found the offshore accounts in the Peterson divorce case. He was expensive, but he was discreet. Evening, Judge, Frank said. He didn't smile. I reached into my purse. I unwrapped the silk scarf. I handed him the plastic bag with the red-stained glass shard. Rush analysis, Frank, I said. Full toxicology screen. I want to know exactly what it is, and I want to know where someone buys it. He took the bag carefully. He held it up to the light. Looks nasty. He grunted. It put a woman on a ventilator in 3 minutes, I said. Be careful. He nodded. I will have the report by morning. You stay safe, Martha. I watched him drive away. I felt a surge of cold satisfaction. The chain of evidence was secure. Now I just needed to find the motive. I knew it was money, but I needed the details. In my courtroom, you didn't just need to prove the crime, you needed to prove the why. I walked back inside. I checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I messed up my hair a little bit. I pinched my cheeks to make them look flushed. I walked back to the waiting room ready for Act 2. Jason was back with the water. He was holding a paper cup and staring at his phone. He looked sick. Not worried sick, scared sick. Thank you, dear, I said, taking the water. He didn't answer. He was typing a text message furiously. His fingers were flying across the screen. I took a sip of water and watched him over the rim of the cup. I needed to see that phone. I needed to know who he was talking to. Just then a doctor walked into the waiting room. He looked tired. He was wearing green scrubs and holding a clipboard. Family of Linda Miller. He called out. Tiffany let out a gasp and ran toward him. Jason jumped up, dropping his phone on the plastic chair next to me. He didn't even notice. He ran to the doctor's side. I waited 1 second, 2 seconds. They were huddled around the doctor listening intently. I reached out. I slid Jason's phone off the chair and into my lap. It was unlocked. You know, ladies, technology is a funny thing. We complain about it constantly. We hate the passwords and the updates, and the way the buttons get smaller every year. But let me tell you, when you are hunting for the truth, an unlocked smartphone is better than a witness on the stand under oath. It is a diary that no one thinks to burn. I held Jason's phone in my lap, hidden beneath the folds of my cashmere wrap. My heart wasn't racing. I was in chambers now. I was reviewing the evidence. I didn't have to look far. The messaging app was open. The last conversation wasn't with his wife. It was with a contact saved simply as the bull. I read the last 3 messages. The bull at 2:15 p.m. Enjoy your turkey, Jason. It's your last meal if you don't have the 200K by Monday. Jason at 2:20 p.m. I have a plan. The inheritance is coming. Just give me a few days for the probate to clear. The bull at 2:21 p.m. You have until noon Monday, or we take the boutique first, then your kneecaps. I felt a cold chill settle in my stomach. $200,000. My son wasn't just broke, he was underwater with sharks, and the inheritance is coming. He knew. He might not have poured the powder, but he knew the plan. He was an accessory to murder before the fact. I quickly scrolled to his messages with Tiffany from earlier that morning. Tiffany at 10 a.m. Is the old hag definitely eating here? I need to know the timeline. Jason at 10:05 a.m. Yes, just be careful, Tiff. If this goes wrong. Tiffany at 10:06 a.m. It won't. Just keep her talking. I'll handle the drinks. By Monday we'll be rich and free. I closed my eyes for a second. The old hag. That's what I was to them. Not a mother, not a grandmother, just an obstacle. A walking ATM that refused to dispense cash fast enough. I pulled my own phone out of my purse. Moving with the speed of a stenographer, I took photos of the screen. Click, click, click. Evidence secured. I slid Jason's phone back onto the chair. Just as the doctor stopped talking, Tiffany let out a wail that sounded like a dying cat and collapsed into Jason's arms. She's in a coma. Tiffany cried, my mother is in a coma. I stood up adjusting my wrap. I shuffled over to them. Oh no, I whispered. What did the doctor say? Jason looked at me. His face was gray. He looked like a man who was watching his own funeral. They don't know, Jason stammered. They said her system is shutting down. It looks like some kind of neurotoxin. They are running screens, but they've never seen anything like it. A neurotoxin, I asked, widening my eyes like food poisoning. Maybe. Tiffany sniffled, wiping her nose. Maybe it was the turkey or the mushrooms. You know, Mom has a sensitive stomach. But we all ate the turkey, I pointed out gently. And we are fine. Linda was the only one who drank the. I let the sentence hang there. Tiffany froze, her eyes snapped to mine. Panic flared in her pupils. She remembered the switch, or maybe she didn't. Maybe she was terrified that I knew. Or maybe she was terrified that if Linda woke up, she would remember the taste of bitter almonds, or whatever chemical cocktail Tiffany had brewed up. It was the mushrooms. Tiffany insisted, her voice rising. Definitely the mushrooms. We should go. I can't be here. It's too sterile. I need to go home. But Tiffany, I said, don't you want to be here when she wakes up? She isn't going to wake up. Tiffany snapped. Then she caught herself. The silence in the waiting room was deafening. I mean, the doctor said it could be days. She backtracked, her voice trembling. I need to rest. I'm so traumatized. Of course, dear, I said, we should all go. Jason looked at me. Mom, you can't be alone right now, not after a shock like this. I saw the gears turning in his head. The bull wanted his money on Monday. If I was alive, they couldn't pay. They needed access to me. They needed another chance. You should come stay with us, Jason said, or, actually, our place is so small, we should come stay with you just for a few days to look after you. There it was, the Trojan horse maneuver. They wanted to move into the crime scene. They wanted to sleep down the hall from the victim they failed to kill. I looked at my son. I saw the sweat on his brow. I saw the desperation. If I said no, they might run, they might panic. I needed them close. I needed them to feel safe so they would make a mistake. That is a wonderful idea, I said, patting Jason's hand. I don't want to be alone in that big house tonight. I keep seeing Linda falling. Over and over, I shuddered. It wasn't entirely acting. Let's go home, I said. I walked toward the exit. I could feel them behind me. The sharks were circling, but they didn't realize that I had just poured blood in the water on purpose. I had the text messages. I had the toxicology report pending. Now I just needed to get them to confess on tape. And for that, I needed to turn my home into a courtroom. There is a specific feeling you get when you realize you are sleeping under the same roof as your executioners. It is a cold prickle on the back of your neck, like a draft from an open window in winter. They moved in on Friday morning. They brought suitcases like they were planning a vacation, but they looked like a funeral procession. Tiffany carried her makeup bag like it was the crown jewels, and Jason carried his guilt like a 100-pound rucksack. I watched them from the kitchen window. I had spent the night preparing the battlefield. I hid my real medication in a hollowed-out book in the library. I replaced the pills in the bathroom cabinet with sugar placebos I bought at the pharmacy. I wasn't going to let them drug me into a stupor while I slept. Tiffany walked in first. She was wearing a tracksuit that cost more than my first car. She looked around my kitchen with a critical eye. She was already measuring the drapes. She was already imagining how the room would look when she spent my money to renovate it. "How are you feeling, Mom?" she asked. She didn't look at me. She opened the refrigerator and started moving things around. "I am feeling a little foggy," I said. I sat at the table and rubbed my temples. "I just can't stop thinking about Linda. It happened so fast." Tiffany stopped. She turned around slowly. "You know Martha," she said. Her voice dropped an octave. It sounded like she was talking to a toddler. "Jason and I were talking about that. We think you might be confused about what happened." "Confused?" I asked. "Yes." Tiffany walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and cold. "You were acting very strange at dinner. You were shaking, you dropped the gravy boat, and then, well, we didn't want to say anything, but you mixed up the glasses." I kept my face blank. Here it was, the opening statement of the defense, "Mixed up the glasses," I repeated. "Yes, you handed my mother your glass, the cranberry one. You were supposed to drink it yourself, remember? But you got confused and gave it to her." I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. She was trying to convince me that I had accidentally poisoned her mother with the poison she had brought. It was a brilliant strategy. If Linda died and the police found poison, it wasn't Tiffany's fault. It was the senile old lady who mixed up the drinks. "Oh my," I whispered. I covered my mouth with my hand. "Did I really?" Jason walked in carrying a duffel bag. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "She did, Jason," Tiffany said, looking at her husband. "Tell her." Jason swallowed hard. I could see his Adam's apple bob. "Yeah, Mom, you seemed really out of it. You insisted Linda take your drink. We tried to stop you, but you wouldn't listen." I let my shoulders slump. I let a tear leak out of my eye. I had practiced crying on command for years. It was a useful skill during settlement negotiations. "I don't remember that," I stammered. I thought, "Oh dear God, is this my fault?" Tiffany hugged me. It felt like being hugged by a boa constrictor. "Shoo, it's okay," she cooed. "We aren't blaming you. We know you are getting older. Your memory isn't what it used to be. That is why we are here, to take care of you, to make sure you don't make any more mistakes." She pulled back and smiled. It was the smile of a predator who thinks the prey has just stepped into the trap. Why don't you go rest in the den? Tiffany suggested. I will make you some tea. I brought some special herbal blend. It is very relaxing. I looked at her. Special herbal blend. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice and I deserve to be legally declared incompetent. That sounds lovely, dear, I said. I walked to the den. I sat in my leather recliner. I waited until I heard the kettle whistle. They thought they had me. They thought I was buying the narrative. They thought they could convince the police and the doctors that I was a danger to myself and others. But they forgot one thing. I had been recording the dining room conversation on my internal hard drive for 40 years. My memory was perfect, and I had just planted a little device in the kitchen that was recording them right now. I pulled out my phone and opened the app for the nanny cam I had hidden in the spice rack an hour ago. I watched the screen. Tiffany was standing over the stove. She wasn't making tea, she was pouring the hot water into the sink. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small vial. She put 2 drops into a cup of lukewarm water from the tap. She is doing it again, Jason. Tiffany whispered. I could hear her clearly through the speaker. She is losing it. This is perfect. If she dies of a stroke or a fall this weekend, everyone will just say it was tragic but expected. Jason was leaning against the counter. He looked sick. Do we have to do the tea? He asked. Can't we just wait? We don't have time to wait, Tiffany hissed. The bull wants his money on Monday. If we don't have control of her accounts by noon, we are dead. Do you understand? We are dead. She picked up the cup. Go give this to her, she ordered. Make sure she drinks it all. I turned off the phone. I slipped it under the cushion. I sat back and closed my eyes. The game had accelerated. They weren't just gaslighting me. They were on a deadline, noon on Monday. That gave me 48 hours to destroy them. But first I had to deal with this cup of tea. Jason walked into the den holding the mug like it was a live grenade. His hand was shaking so badly, the liquid was sloshing against the rim. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He looked at the floor, at the bookshelves, at his own shoes. Here you go, Mom, he mumbled. Tiffany made it. It'll help you sleep. I reached out with a hand that I deliberately allowed to tremble. I took the mug, it was warm. It smelled of peppermint and betrayal. Thank you, Jason, I whispered. I brought the cup to my lips but didn't drink. I just inhaled the steam. You were always such a good boy, taking care of your old mother. He flinched. The guilt was eating him alive, but fear of his wife and the loan shark was eating him faster. Drink it while it's hot. He said, his voice tight. I will, I promised, but Jason, before I rest, I need to ask you something. He froze by the door. What? The blue folder, I said. In my study on the mahogany desk. Is it still there? I don't know why. I let out a long, ragged sigh. I was working on something last week. Before I started getting confused. It's a new trust structure. It transfers the liquid assets, the 20 million, directly to you and Tiffany immediately upon my signature. I didn't want you to have to wait for probate. Jason's eyes widened. I saw the dollar signs flash in his pupils. $20 million. Immediate access, no probate, no waiting, but I didn't sign it yet. I continued, my voice breaking. I was going to do it Monday, but now, with Linda, and my memory going, I don't know if I'm competent to sign it. Maybe it's too late. I leaned back and closed my eyes, clutching the poison tea. If I die without signing it, I mumbled, the money stays locked in the charitable trust for 5 years. That was the old will. I wanted to change it for you. Jason stared at me. He was doing the math. If I drank the tea and died tonight, they got the old will. Locked money. If I lived long enough to sign the new document, they got everything immediately. The blue folder, he asked breathlessly. Yes, I whispered, top drawer. I'll go check on it, he said. You just rest, Mom. Don't drink the tea yet. Let it cool down. He turned and ran. He actually ran out of the room. The moment the door clicked shut, I moved. I was out of the recliner in 2 seconds. I didn't pour the tea into the potted fern. That's amateur hour, and Tiffany would check the soil. I poured the liquid into a heavy-duty Ziploc bag I had stashed in my knitting basket earlier that morning. I sealed it tight, squeezing out the air. Then I hid the bag inside the hollow body of a decorative ceramic cat on the bookshelf. I sat back down. I rubbed my eyes to make them red. I pulled out my phone and checked the nanny cam in the study. They were there. Tiffany was tearing through the top drawer of my desk. She found the blue folder. It was a prop I had planted days ago, filled with impressive-looking legal jargon that meant absolutely nothing but looked very expensive. Look at this. Tiffany shrieked, waving a document. Revocable living trust. Immediate transfer of assets. Jason, this is it. This is the jackpot. She hasn't signed it. Jason said, pointing to the blank line at the bottom. See, if she dies tonight, we get nothing for 5 years. The bull will kill us by then. Tiffany scanned the document. Her eyes were manic. We can't kill her, Tiffany whispered. Not yet. We need her hand on this paper. So what do we do? Jason asked. Tiffany paced the room. She looked like a caged tiger. We pivot, she said. We don't need her dead. We need her compliant. We need her to sign this tomorrow. We need to convince her that she has to sign it. How? Tiffany stopped pacing. She looked at the camera. Or rather at the hidden lens she didn't know was there. A slow, cruel smile spread across her face. She thinks she poisoned my mother, Tiffany said. She thinks she's losing her mind. We tell her the police are coming. We tell her they suspect her. We tell her the only way to protect the money from being seized by the state as evidence is to transfer it to us now. Will she believe that? Jason asked. She's scared, Jason. She's confused. She's guilty. We hold a family meeting tomorrow. We depose her. We break her down until she signs away her life just to stay out of prison. I watched them on the tiny screen of my phone. I watched them plot my destruction. Tiffany thought she was the prosecutor. She thought she was going to cross-examine a weak, senile old woman and bully her into a confession. She didn't know she was walking into a deposition with a federal judge. I turned off the phone. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. Come on then, Tiffany. I whispered to the empty room. Court is in session. Honey, let me tell you something about a deposition. It is not about finding the truth. It is about getting the other side to lock themselves into a lie. Once they are on the record with a lie, you own them. You can dangle that lie over their heads until the end of time. Tiffany thought she was holding a family meeting to save me. In reality, she was walking into a cross-examination without a lawyer. It was Saturday morning. The house was quiet in that heavy, suffocating way that happens before a storm. I was sitting at the dining room table, the same table where Linda had collapsed 48 hours ago. Tiffany had scrubbed the rug, but I could still see the faint outline of the cranberry stain. It looked like blood. Tiffany sat across from me. She was wearing her serious business face. She had a notepad, a pen, and the blue folder I had planted. Jason sat next to her, looking like he was about to vomit into a potted plant. Mom, Tiffany started. Her voice was low and urgent. We received a phone call this morning from Detective Miller. I widened my eyes. I clutched my chest. Oh no, I gasped. Is Linda? Is she gone? No, Tiffany said quickly. Linda is stable. But the police. Martha, they are asking questions about you, about me, I squeaked. Yes, Tiffany leaned forward. She locked eyes with me. She was a terrible liar, but she was committed to the bit. They found fingerprints on the glass, Mom, your fingerprints. and they have a witness who says they saw you swap the drinks. I let my mouth hang open. I started to tremble, but I didn't mean to. I stammered. It was an accident. I was confused. It doesn't matter what you meant, Tiffany hissed. To the police, it looks like attempted murder. They are talking about freezing your assets. They are talking about seizing this house as part of the investigation. Do you know what that means? It means the government takes everything. You will die in prison penniless. I started to cry, real tears. I thought about how much I loved this house and how much I hated the woman trying to steal it. What do? I wailed. I don't want to go to prison. Tiffany slid the blue folder across the table. She opened it to the signature page. There is one way to protect yourself, she said. If you sign this trust transfer document right now, we can move the assets into Jason's name before the police file the warrant. If the money is in our name, the government can't touch it. We will hold it for you. We will keep it safe, and we will hire the best lawyers to keep you out of jail. I looked at the document. It was garbage legal work. It was full of typos and clauses that would never hold up in court, but the intent was clear. It was a total transfer of $20 million. I picked up the pen. My hand shook violently. Jason, I whispered, is this true? Did the police really call? Jason looked at the table. He looked at his wife. He looked at the Rolex watch I had bought him for his graduation. Yes, Mom, he whispered. His voice cracked. They called. You have to sign it. It is the only way. I looked at the paper. I looked at the hidden camera lens disguised as a screw on the light switch plate on the wall. I looked at the audio recorder taped to the underside of the table. I needed one more thing. I needed the motive. I needed them to admit why they needed the money today. I put the pen down. I can't, I sobbed. Tiffany slammed her hand on the table. Sign the damn paper, Martha, she screamed. I flinched. Why the rush, Tiffany? I asked. My voice was small. Why can't we wait until Monday? If the police come, I can just explain. We can't wait, Tiffany yelled. Her face was turning red. The veins in her neck were popping out. You don't understand. What don't I understand? I asked. I needed her to say it. I needed her to say the name. Tiffany was breathing hard, her chest heaving beneath her silk blouse. She was frustrated, she was panicked, and she was sloppy. In my courtroom, I have seen seasoned mobsters crack under less pressure than this. All it takes is silence. If you stay quiet long enough, people will fill that silence with the truth, just to stop the noise in their own heads. What don't I understand, Tiffany? I asked again, my voice trembling just the right amount. If the police freeze the assets, we can just get a lawyer to unfreeze them later. Why do we need the money today? Tiffany looked at Jason. She looked at the clock on the wall. It was 11:45 a.m. on Saturday. The bull wanted his money by noon on Monday because Tiffany gritted her teeth. She looked like she was about to explode. Tell her, Jason whispered. He had his head in his hands. Just tell her, Tiff. She has to know. Tiffany spun on him. Shut up, Jason. No, Jason said, looking up. His eyes were bloodshot. Mom, it's not just the police. It's the investors. Investors, I asked, widening my eyes. Loan sharks, Mom, Jason blurted out. Okay, are you happy? I borrowed money. A lot of money. To try and save the business. To save everything. How much? I whispered. $200,000, Jason sobbed, and the interest? It's compounding. They said if I don't pay them by Monday at noon, they are going to hurt us. They are going to hurt you. There it was, the motive, the extortion, the threat of physical violence. I looked at Tiffany. Is this true? Tiffany stopped pacing. She slammed her hands down on the table and leaned into my face. Yes, it's true, she screamed. Your loser son gambled away our future on bad crypto deals and failed. Real estate flips. We owe the bull $250,000, and if we don't pay him, he is going to burn my boutique to the ground and break Jason's legs. So sign the damn paper, Martha. Sign it or we all die. Gotcha. I felt a rush of adrenaline that was better than any drug. I had it. I had the admission of the debt. I had the admission of the threat. I had the coercion on tape. I picked up the pen again. I let my hand hover over the signature line. I had no idea. I sniffled. I just wanted to help. Then help, Tiffany yelled, sign it. Transfer the money so we can pay him off and send the police away. I looked at the document one last time. The Revocable Living Trust. By signing this under duress with evidence of extortion, I wasn't giving them money. I was giving the district attorney a slam dunk case for elder abuse, extortion, and attempted grand larceny. I pressed the pen to the paper. I signed my name. Martha E. Sterling. I dated it. I even added the time, 11:52 a.m. Tiffany snatched the paper away before the ink was dry. She clutched it to her chest like it was a holy relic. She let out a laugh that sounded half mad. She did it, Tiffany breathed. She looked at Jason. We're saved, we're rich. Jason didn't look rich. He looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and die. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Jason, I said, dropping the act just a fraction. My voice was a little stronger now. A little less quavery. You did what you thought you had to do. Tiffany was already pulling out her phone. I'm calling the bank. I'm going to initiate the wire transfer immediately. We can do it online with these codes. She tapped furiously on her screen. Wait, she frowned. It says, account access restricted. Please contact branch manager. She looked up at me. What is this? Why is it restricted? I stood up. I didn't push the chair back slowly. I stood up with the posture of a woman who had worn a black robe for 40 years. I smoothed my skirt. I picked up my teacup, the one I hadn't drunk, and walked to the sink. Oh, I said casually, pouring the cold tea down the drain. I forgot to mention, I called the bank yesterday morning. Tiffany froze. What? I put a fraud alert on all my accounts, I said, turning to face them. I wasn't crying anymore. My eyes were dry. My face was hard as granite. Standard procedure when one suspects irregularities. Tiffany's voice went high. What are you talking about? You said you were confused. I lied, I said. The room went deadly silent. Jason looked up, his jaw dropping. Tiffany took a step back, clenching the blue folder in her hand. You lied, Tiffany whispered. I'm a judge, Tiffany, I said, stepping toward her. I know how to spot a liar because I listen to them all day long. And you are a terrible liar. I pointed to the light switch, hidden camera. I pointed to the table, audio recorder. I patted my pocket where my phone was. And right here I have the toxicology report from Frank's lab. It turns out Linda didn't have a stroke. She had a massive dose of cyanide-based rat poison, the kind they sell at the hardware store 3 blocks from your boutique. Tiffany's face went white. She looked at the paper in her hand, the paper she had just bullied me into signing. This, she stammered. This is that, I said, pointing to the blue folder, is Exhibit A in your trial for extortion and attempted murder. Jason stood up. Mom, what did you do? I did what I had to do, I said. I issued a verdict. Just then the front door burst open. I hadn't locked it. I had unlocked it 10 minutes ago when I saw the unmarked sedans pull into the driveway on my phone app. Police. A voice boomed from the hallway. Nobody move. Detective Miller walked into the dining room, gun drawn but lowered. He looked at me. He looked at Tiffany holding the folder. He looked at Jason shaking in his chair. Martha, Detective Miller said, nodding to me, we got the signal from your security team. I smiled at Tiffany. It was the same smile I used when I sentenced a man to life without parole. Hello, Detective, I said. I believe the defendants are ready to be taken into custody. Now, ladies, I have heard a lot of sounds in my life. I have heard the roar of a stadium and the cry of a newborn baby. But let me tell you, there is no sound sweeter than the click of stainless steel handcuffs latching onto the wrists of people who thought they were smarter than you. It is the sound of justice and it rings like a bell. The dining room turned into a scene from a cop show in about 3 seconds. Detective Miller didn't waste time. 2 uniformed officers stepped in behind him. They moved with the efficiency of people who had done this 1,000 times. Tiffany dropped the blue folder. It hit the floor and slid under the table. She looked at the police and then she looked at me. Her face crumpled. The arrogance vanished and was replaced by the ugly, desperate look of a cornered rat. It wasn't me, she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Jason. It was his idea. He owes the money. He made me do it. Jason didn't even argue. He just slumped forward in his chair and put his head on the table. He sobbed. Great heaving sobs that shook his whole body. Get up, Detective Miller said, grabbing Tiffany's arm. You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Linda Davis and the extortion of Martha Sterling. I didn't do it. Tiffany shrieked as the officer spun her around. Martha is crazy, she is senile, she mixed up the drinks, ask my mother. I walked over to the sideboard. I picked up the plastic bag I had sealed on Thanksgiving. The one with the broken glass shard. Detective, I said calmly. I believe this belongs to you. Detective Miller took the bag. Is this the glass? It is, I said. And here is the toxicology report from the private lab confirming it contains highly concentrated berdificum. That is rat poison, detective. And here, I handed him my phone, is a video recording from 10 minutes ago where the defendant admits to poisoning the tea I am holding right now. I pointed to the Ziploc bag inside the ceramic cat. Tiffany stopped screaming. She stared at the bag. She stared at the phone. She realized that while she was playing checkers, I had been playing 3-dimensional chess. You recorded us, she whispered. I am a federal judge, Tiffany. I said, leaning in close so only she could hear. I record everything. They hauled them out. Jason went quietly. He looked at me one last time as they led him to the door. Mom, he whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't look away, but I didn't answer. I had loved that boy for 32 years. I had paid for his mistakes. I had covered his tracks. But you cannot save someone who is determined to drown you to stay afloat. I watched through the window as they put them in separate cars. The neighbors were all out on their lawns watching. I saw Mrs. Higgins across the street clutching her pearls. I gave her a little wave. Let them talk. The truth would come out in the morning papers. Detective Miller stayed behind for a moment to collect the recording devices. You took a big risk, Martha, he said, putting the tiny camera into an evidence bag. Letting them move in here. Letting them think they had one. I knew the risks, I said, but I needed them to feel safe. People only make mistakes when they feel safe, detective. He shook his head and smiled. Remind me never to get on your bad side, Judge. You would be wise to remember that, I said. He left. The house was quiet again. The dining room was empty. The blue folder was still under the table. I picked it up. I looked at the signature on the page. Martha Sterling, signed under duress. I walked into the kitchen. I turned on the gas stove. I held the corner of the document to the flame. I watched the paper curl and blacken. I watched the lies burn. I dropped it into the sink and watched it turn to ash. They wanted my money. They wanted my house. They wanted my life. Instead, they got a front row seat to the justice system they thought they could outsmart. It has been 6 months since that Thanksgiving. The seasons have changed. The winter frost melted away and my garden is blooming with tulips and daffodils. It is funny how life goes on even after your heart has been broken. You just prune the dead branches and wait for something new to grow. The trial was short. It turns out that when you have video evidence, a confession, and physical proof of poison, defense lawyers do not have much to work with. Tiffany tried to plead insanity. She tried to say the stress of the debt made her snap. The jury didn't buy it. Not after they saw the text messages where she called me an old hag and joked about spending my money. She got 20 years. The judge called her calculating and remorseless. I sat in the back row of the courtroom and watched them lead her away. She didn't look at me. She just stared straight ahead, her face hard and bitter. Jason got 10 years. He testified against her in exchange for a lighter sentence. He admitted everything, the gambling, the loan sharks, the plan. He cried on the stand. I think part of him was relieved to finally stop running. I visit him once a month. We talk through the glass partition. It isn't the relationship I wanted with my son, but it is the one I have. He is sober now. He is working in the prison library. Maybe when he gets out in a decade, he will be the man I thought I raised. As for Linda, she survived. She spent 3 weeks in the hospital and another 2 months in rehab relearning how to walk. The poison damaged her nervous system, but she is a tough old bird. She came to see me last week. She sat in my living room and drank tea, real tea this time. I raised a monster. Linda said, staring into her cup, "I'm so sorry, Martha. We don't raise them to be monsters, Linda." I told her, "We raise them to be people, and people make choices." She nodded. She looked old. The sparkle was gone from her eyes. She lost her daughter and her health in one afternoon because of greed. I still live in my house. The neighbors still whisper, but I don't mind. I have my garden, I have my books, and I have my peace. I invited Detective Miller over for dinner last night. He is a nice man. He likes my pot roast. We didn't talk about the case. We talked about baseball and the weather. It was nice to have a man at the table who wasn't trying to steal my wallet. Tonight I am sitting on my back porch watching the sunset. I have a glass of cranberry spritzer in my hand. I made it myself. I watch the bubbles rise to the top. People think that because I am 70 I am finished. They think I am frail. They think I am easy prey. But they forget that old wood burns the hottest. They forget that I spent 40 years determining guilt and innocence. Tiffany and Jason thought they were writing the end of my story. They thought they were closing the book on Martha Sterling. But they forgot one very important rule of the courtroom. The trial isn't over until the judge bangs the gavel. I took a sip of my drink. It was tart and sweet and cold. I set the glass down on the table with a sharp, definitive click. Case closed.